Welcome to another edition of the BTCC Roundup show. My name's Shaun Hollamby, and I'm joined by Jake Hill, who's sort of one of the men of the moment in the British Touring Car Championship after a particularly successful meeting at the last round at Knock Hill, but we'll talk about it in a minute. Also joined by Inside BTCC and our resident pit lane interviewer, Matt Salisbury, who's will have all the facts and figures for the rest of the season, but also for some of the meetings that have just gone. But first of all, Jake, what a fantastic weekend you had at Knock Hill.
Hi, Shaun. And yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. And yeah, you're right. You know, what a fantastic weekend I had at Knock Hill. It was simply my best British touring car weekend to date. So many positives to take from it, really. I just loved it. You know, I really did. Knock Hill has been very good to me in recent years in a British touring car, and this year did not disappoint.
No, that's right. Interestingly, we had Rory Butcher on, who was your sort of teammate a couple of years ago. And I mentioned about how you'd picked up a few little tips from Rory, because obviously he knows the place well, having instructed and raced there a lot, home circuit and all that sort of stuff. But there was, which is sometimes, you know, it gets talked about, but actually sometimes being a home circuit doesn't mean anything at all, really. But it just happens to be it's easier to get to in the morning when you're coming from home. But apart from that, but he did actually, I sort of remember the point. I'm not going to say which bit it is, because obviously that's privileged information. But there was a part of the track that he specifically, and it's not even the bit that you'd expect. You'd think it was the really exciting bit. So I'll leave that to people to guess which bit. Special prize for anybody who guesses it on the app. So what, you know, that's the sort of thing that gained you quite a bit of time, really. I remember a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being teammates, half teammates with Rory back in 2019 when he was driving your Honda Civic and I was driving your Audi. And, you know, it was a really nice working relationship all four of us had with Mark Blundell, Sam Tordoff, Mike Bushell, and obviously Rory that year. And, you know, I was really struggling at Knock Hill, always had in a touring car, simply because the curb use is so different there compared to anything you drive before. So I was just really struggling with actually quite a few points around the circuit in terms of exactly what to hit. And it was Rory that taught me through the lap. And I watched I think he got pole that year, if I'm not mistaken, in that FK2 Honda of yours, Shaun. And, you know, we were watching that lap and I was watching it over and over and over again before the race day on Sunday. And Rory taught me through it and taught me, we come up with a bit of a deal. I said, okay, well, you teach me around Knock Hill and I'll teach you around Brands GP, as I seem to be all right there. And I did return the favour later that year and he beat me there. So I guess it does come around. But yeah, it was Rory that taught me how to go quick round there, to be honest. In a touring car anyway, he showed me, you know, all those little tricks that you need, and it definitely helped, you know. It was fantastic. I obviously got my first win that year in 2019, and every year we've gone back there since, I've been right at the front. So it's been, you know, it's really been fantastic. And I do owe a lot of thanks to Rory for showing me those little tricks there.
Well, I mean, Matt's got a good stat about your points haul, but 59 points at Knock Hill. I mean, you've been looking to sort of knocking on the door of having one of those sort of weekends, but it hasn't always quite gone to plan as the season's gone on. But Matt, what's the stat that you've got about points from this weekend?
Well, it's not necessarily about points from the weekend, but points from Jake's career, full stop. And that is, he hit 1,000 points over the course of the weekend at Knock Hill. He wasn't the only driver to do it as well. Dan Camish did it. I think Dan would probably have liked to have hit the landmark in a bit more style than he did. Jake certainly made sure he did it good and proper. And it's like Jake says, it's a circuit that's been kind to him in recent years. I mean, the thing that I would wonder is, you know, taking the first win there in the Audi wasn't necessarily, you know, a front-running, race-winning car. You looked in a bit with the reverse grid. You've gone back there this time around with the BMW, which is clearly one of the strongest packages on the grid. I mean, just how different was it going into the weekend with, you know, such a front-running car underneath you compared to what you'd had in the past? Because, I mean, even when, you know, you were in the Honda and the Focus, they weren't necessarily right at the front of the grid.
Yeah, very good question, Matt. And, you know, you're right to, you know, to say that the other two, you know, the Ford and the Honda from the last couple of years, they weren't quite maybe race winning pace. And it's a strange one, you know. I mean, I could go on and bang about loads of reasons as to why they weren't, but you are right in that going this year with the BMW, which is, you know, no doubt my favorite touring car, British touring car that I've driven and raced. I love it so much. I love everything about it. And it was a bit of an odd one because there was a few times this year where we collectively as WSR thought we were going to have an advantage at some tracks, like Croft being one of them. You know, it's always been a BMW circuit, really. With Colin, I think, having the most wins ever, I think, if I'm not mistaken, out of any driver there on the grid at Croft and with a BMW. And, you know, we rocked up at Croft and we just weren't. I mean, okay, Colin did get pole, but in a race situation, we really weren't the quickest car. You know, the Hyundai's quite clearly had an advantage on the day. And we were a bit skeptical coming to Knockhill. Obviously, we hoped we were going to be good. And me and my engineer, Craig, had some things up our sleeve from the SNET test and some things we know about Knockhill anyway from previous cars. And, you know, we went to Knockhill when it was raining in FP1. And, okay, I was second whilst it was raining. And then I ended up sixth because it dried out, whatever. But then FP2, we were still there. And in qualifying, obviously, to get a pole by that much, you know, over 2/10 it was over Ash in the end. Really hit home just how good that car is going to be throughout this weekend, you know, and I that gave me all the confidence I needed to go into race day, knowing that I have the fastest car. I'm the fastest driver currently, you know, around this circuit this weekend. All I have to do is sort of put it together and get it across the line. And obviously we did just that.
Well, you didn't have it all your own way, though, did you? Because
No.
you had Ash Sutton, I mean, I've got to say, classic British touring car race, definitely the first one. A fantastic race, absolutely fantastic. Yes, bit of contact, but everybody moans about a bit of contact. Then they moan, then there isn't a bit of contact. Basically, at some point or other, people moan. But
Yeah.
I thought it was a classic race of two guys who were absolutely top of their game at the moment. I mean, Ash is, you know, a proven talent, and you're a proven talent, but maybe haven't had the sort of the equipment to show that sort of as clearly as you're doing at the moment with the West Surrey MB Motorsport BMW.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. You know, I mean, it was a fantastic battle with Ash, and you know, I've got to give him his credit. He was pretty fair to me, and I think I was pretty fair to him. Okay, hands up. I made the mistake of hitting him quite hard into the hairpin one lap. It's just one of those things. He just caught me out. He brakes a little bit earlier than I thought, and I couldn't unrelease that lockup, you know. But I think that was the only contact we had, pretty much. A little tiny rub across the line in race 2, but that was pretty much the only contact we had, and it was very fair but very hard racing. Some of the hardest laps I've ever had racing for fighting for a win. You know, me and Ash were coming at each other constantly in that race 1, in those mid laps of that race. And yeah, it was hard, but I was never going to let him get away with it. You know, I was never going to let him win that race. I was always going to come back at him. And yeah, you know, we were just flying. And once I got it done, to be honest, it was quite easy from that point. We managed to just control the race nice and comfortably, not do anything silly, keep hitting all the same bits on the lap. And, you know, you come home to take another win at Knockhill, which is awesome. So, yeah, but I mean, credit to him. You know, he's driving extremely well, and I think both of us put on, as you say, a classic touring car race. And yeah, okay, people moan that I hit Ash, but you are right. You know, all right? We won't race then. You know, I mean, it's like sometimes it happens. Just get on with it. He's done the same to me before, and it won't be the last time it happens between us all. So, you know, at the end of the day, we developed an awesome race that hopefully the fans will remember for a long time.
No, definitely. I mean, I agree. So going back to the start of the year, obviously it's your first time racing rear-wheel drive in the British Touring Car Championship, and there's lots of discussions about front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. At the end of the day, there's advantages and disadvantages of both types. It's a physics lesson, really, isn't it, of where you put the engine, where the weight is, where the drive is, where the steering is. So there will be differences at different points. But from a driver's point of view, I mean, you hit the ground running at the start of the year, had pole position at Donington. The weekend didn't go quite as well as you wanted it to, but still picked up good points. But from a driver's point of view, how much difference is there between the two, and what is the big difference between front and rear wheel drive?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you know, the front wheel drive car is very fast over one lap. I think in qualifying, there's no real benefit to rear or front wheel drive. I think, you know, the front wheel drive car is arguably slightly better if it's hooked up. That's the thing. Rear wheel drive car can be a little bit loose or a little bit not quite in the window and still be quite fast. Whereas a front wheel drive car, if it's not quite in the window, it can be quite slow. It can be hard work. But I do think over a one lap qualifying pace, the front wheel drive car probably still has it although we're giving it a good go at coming back at them. But and then in a race situation, I think, to be honest, I think the only real benefit of a front-wheel drive car is if you're in a fight, because if you have a bit of a knock or something, or you make a slight mistake, it's quite easy to recover and keep the car moving forwards. You know, when you're in a rear-wheel drive car, if someone gives you a bit of a touch, or again, you make a small mistake, you lose quite a lot of time because you have to come so much out the throttle to control the car and keep it in the right direction. So I think, yeah, if you're racing hard with someone, a front-wheel drive car is probably the better car to have. But over a race distance, there's no question that a rear-wheel drive car keeps its tyres lasting a lot longer. And, you know, on the right day, it can be a weapon. But I think, again, it goes back to two different conditions as well. In the dry, yes, rear-wheel drive stuff probably has an advantage over a race run in terms of speed. But in the wet, nothing in it. And I would argue the front-wheel drive car is definitely a better car to have, just from keeping your foot in performance, really, in terms of power output, because the car's a lot more easier to control with it being front-wheel drive, to be honest. So yeah, it's a tough one, and it is condition dependent, but we haven't had that much rain so far this year, and don't think we're going to get it at Snetterton either by looking at the weather. So yeah, it's going to be a good weekend for us, I think, at Snet with it being so hot.
Just touching on something that Jake said there. I mean, you've said there about the differences between a front and a rear-wheel drive car, but you also mentioned a little bit earlier about when you went to Knockhill, talking with your engineer about things that you'd learned previously that you could bring into this weekend. Obviously, any experience you had at Knockhill in a touring car was in front-wheel drive. So how much can you bring to WSR with your front-wheel drive experience that can help push the BMW on, even though the wheels are driving the other end?
That's a very good point, Matt. But I mean, ultimately, you know, I think a lot of these touring cars now are probably a lot softer than ever. You know, it seems to be where the speed is. I think everyone up and down the grid runs the car quite soft now. You see them moving along. And I think, to be honest, that's come from Ash with the Infinity. We saw how much body roll that car had and how fast it was with him driving it over a race run. And, you know, we were fairly similar with the Ford, and it's not too dissimilar, you know, with the BMW. That's just the way they're all set up now. So there's just a few little aspects that we've tried previously on a front-wheel drive car. I can't tell you exactly what they are, but you know, some of those bits do seem to carry over more than me and Craig thought they probably would, and that's nice to know. But I think, you know, a rear-wheel drive car is just a lot more logical to set up. You know, you think about the things you do to a car to make it work in a certain way. It's a lot more logical, whereas a front-wheel drive car, you know, very, very difficult to get absolutely right, because ultimately, you know, you can just do so much with the rear of the car to change the front. You know, it's just a strange thing. So but yeah, there are definitely things that carry over, and, you know, I think me and my engineer Craig are a bit surprised to see just how much can actually carry over.
Well, you got, you know, really you dropped back a little bit in the first half of the year. You had great pace, but with a few little results that didn't quite go your way. You sort of had the break in the middle of the season, come back, hit the ground running. Suddenly you're right back in the battle again, aren't you? You know, you know, did you expect to be quite that good there? And then also looking forward to as the season carries on, you know, there's only 4 meetings, 12 races to go. So we are in the sort of the countdown to the run to the championship. So what are your targets for the end of this year?
Yeah, that's a good point, Shaun. No, I mean, you're right. You know, we were missing a bit of speed at the, you know, just before that summer break there, especially Alton and Croft, those two specifically, especially Croft. But yeah, I mean, my targets now for the rest of the year is just keep performing, just keep doing what we're doing. I think what we learned at the SNET test on day 2 is having more of an effect in a race situation than maybe we found at Snetterton just doing short runs. So it is a big benefit. It is a big benefit. It's something that, you know, the West Surrey cars have run for a long time, but me and my engineer Craig stepped away from that certain aspect at the start of the year, and, you know, we've ended up coming back to ultimately what WSR know, and it's helping me massively. You know, it's really changed the way the car's behaving, and I feel the car is back where it needs to be for me to do the job. So I feel more confident than ever. I've got all my confidence back. You know, I have no doubt that we're going to be on the podium now at every single round for the rest of the year. At some point in those 3 races, you know, I'm pretty sure we can get a podium in at least one race out of those last remaining 4 rounds. And ultimately, we just need to keep scoring, keep behaving. We've got ourselves in a position now, points wise, in the championship, that those maybe unnecessary risks, potentially, as if you could argue that we had in race 1 at Knockhill, they maybe don't need to be taken quite so much. Now we're back in the title fight. We've just got to keep scoring, keep doing as best we can in qualifying to outperform the others, and try and just get our heads down, really. I have no doubt that no matter where we go now for the rest of the year, the car's going to be fast.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, so your first year of working with West Surrey Racing, you know, the legendary Dick Bennett's as the team manager, who I love. I'm in a slightly vested interest here because I work with you as team manager at the race weekends. But I mean, this is just a general chat. But I mean, you know, what's the difference between working with the teams, including mine from before? You know, I would never ever compare my race team that I ran with West Surrey. It's completely different ball game. You know, but you know, how do you find working with Dick and all the guys and girls at West Surrey Racing?
Yeah, I think every single person that works for that team has an important role. You know, I mean, it's I get on so well with everyone. That's the great thing about it. You know, I really do love the team to pieces. You know, they're just brilliant. They're so good at what they do. They are, in my eyes, the best in the paddock. And I think it simply comes down to, you know, their process of bringing mechanics, boys, girls, whatever, through the process is very different to others. You know, some teams just go out and just employ someone and away you go. But the way West Surrey do it is they bring in a number 3, which is someone who just does bodywork, tyres, air jack, fairly simple stuff. And they normally stay with the team for some time and eventually end up being a number 1 mechanic, which is obviously running the car entirely and looking after it. And so I think for a start, a lot of their professionalism comes from their process of how they bring up their mechanics to where they need to be. The structure that team has in all aspects, but especially the mechanical side, and the thought process behind everything is just very professional. And it's like nothing I've seen before in a touring car paddock. You know, a lot of their staff stay on for a long time, and they know the cars inside and out, and they know the structure in the way that things need to be done. So that's firstly a great thing, is that the preparation side of the car is second to none. You know, I mean, you've seen it firsthand, Shaun. Everything is absolutely mint all the time. And it's not to say that, you know, Motorbase or your team, Shaun, wasn't, but there's just a lot more happening there. There's just a bit more structure to it all. There's no expense spared with parts, etc. And the cars are always faultless. You know, they really are. So that's great. But from a driving point of view, you know, the engineering debriefs are quite detailed, very detailed. Sometimes I'm sat there in the corner going, okay, Dick, yeah, I got it. You know, we can go now. It's been a while, but ultimately,
see, I know how long your attention span is, so I know that any more than 15 minutes, and it's a bit of a waste of time, to be honest.
Yeah, but do you know what? Anything more than an hour, and I'm getting bored now. But that's because, you know, they're interesting, they're very structured, and every little detail. Ultimately, they're as good as they are because of what they do and how they do it. The other good thing is, you know, from my side, is I've got 2 fantastic teammates that I absolutely love. I love Colin and Stephen very much, and they are vital to all 3 of us being fast on a weekend. You know, all of us collectively, I think we're quite a well-oiled package now. Actually, the 3 of us, we get on. Okay, me and Colin had our little bicker at the start of the year with obviously race 1 and race 2, the first 2 rounds, but you know, we really are all good now, and we get on really well. And we saw that in race 3 at Knockhill, where the team very kindly switched me around to try and get past Rory, and we made it work, you know. And so without that cooperation from the team and from Colin, ultimately who's driving the car, you know, we can't move forward together as a team. So I gained a lot of trust in Colin and the team last weekend at Knockhill, because of their actions and how they dealt with that process. And you know, it's just a nice feeling knowing that you really have got a team behind you. And I'm sure at some point I'm going to need to do the same for Colin, which is absolutely fine, because it is what matters most for the team. And, you know, collectively, we come together so well. So the team element of it is the best part. You know, that they are, even though I am a Rocket MB Motorsport car, doesn't matter, in Dick's eyes, we are WSR regardless, and we work as one.
So then, talking about that, so the MB Motorsport and Rocket connection, I mean, how does that happen? How does that work?
So it's quite simple, to be honest. So West Surrey Racing are the racing team, and they look after, prepare, run the car. So from a car aspect, there is nothing different. It's just what you see on the outside in terms of the livery, who I represent, from a commercial aspect, and that's really where it ends. So MB Motorsport, as most of you will know, I've driven for since 2020. And that came about because I was teammates with Mark Blundell in 2019 for you, Shaun, obviously with the Audis. Mark then didn't want to drive anymore, but he realised that British Touring Cars has a lot to offer commercially, and he could probably, you know, do quite well out of it himself by running, you know, his side of a team. So he came on board in 2020 again with yourself, Shaun, and obviously we've all done pretty well collectively. You know, he's made it work. The commercial aspect he brings is arguably the best in the championship. You know, he's brought some fantastic partners to it with HP, Intel, Rocket, Blue Square, Uniserve, you know, big companies, and never fails to, you know, deliver, really. He's always there. So from a commercial aspect, that is what the difference is. So you see Rocket MB Motorsport, and that is purely, I guess, Mark Blundell and his team taking over one car commercially, in which case they've done this year with Rocket.
Okay, well, that's quite interesting. An interesting way to look at it, because it is there's a, you know, from the outside, from a fan's point of view, they see MB Motorsport, but it's, you know, it's very much a commercial entity, and also Mark's got, you know, some history with West Surrey as well. It was quite funny when I first spoke to Mark. He tested for West Surrey in Formula 3 many years ago, and Dick said, "Okay, mate, okay, mate, okay. What you need to do, don't worry about how fast you go. Just learn how you're doing." Anyway, I think 3 laps later, he was on his roof at Redgate, at Donington or Coppice, one of the two. And Dick said, "What did you do there?" And he went, "Oh, I was trying to do it." And I said, "Well, I told you not to do that." He's very direct, Dick, isn't he? What I love about him is he's very much a racer. You know, that's his passion, is going. I've never seen anybody as passionate. He's still got tears in his eyes now when one of his cars is on the podium, you know, after 40 years of doing British touring cars and many more years doing stuff before that, you know, which I love. And it shows, that really just show the passion of what he's got for the sport. But then heading towards, you know, we're heading towards Snetterton. You had a good test there. You know, your teammates leading the championship. You're fourth. Stephen's not far behind, to be honest, with BMW. That, you know, it's a really good team atmosphere. So I mean, where does it come to? You know, Colin's leading the championship. We saw last weekend that, you know, he was willing to think the long game, if you like, which is really, Colin's super fast and can really get his elbows out when he needs to. But also he's very good at adding in, let's have a little think about this, rather than fighting every single battle. You know, and where does that stand you in the mix of things? I mean, you work well together, but obviously he's leading the championship and you've got to catch him. Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Shaun. I mean, ultimately, you know, from my side, I think the only way I'm going to be able to catch and pass Colin, you know, to be honest, is to just try and outperform him in qualifying and just keep chipping away that points deficit in those races, you know. That I don't see how else you're going to do it, really, other than him having a potential problem. But as I said, you know, West Surrey do such a fantastic job prepping these cars. I can't see a potential problem like that happening, to be honest. So it's going to be tough, you know, but ultimately we are literally 14 points apart, and there's still, what is that?
12 races.
12 races to go.
Yeah.
So an awful lot can happen. I think I've just got to take a lesson from his book. You know, I've got to be consistent. He is ultra consistent. I mean, you know, whilst everyone, including me, you, probably Matt, were looking at me and Ash fighting, which was great. All of a sudden, Colin's leading championship. Where did that come from? You know, so he's extremely good at just sneaking under the radar and just getting it done. So there's definitely a lesson to be learned there. You know, he's a fantastic racing driver, a fantastic teammate, and it's going to take all of my all of my might to beat him, you know, and I know I'm probably working him quite hard as well, I imagine, in terms of from a speed point of view at least. So yeah, we've just got to keep going as we are for now, I think, and just see if I can maybe beat him in qualifying.
So Matt, have you got any more information that will shed a bit of light on how this championship battle is going to end up?
Well, there was a few little things that we saw at Knockhill that aren't necessarily going to impact on the championship battle that we've got ongoing at the moment, but that are quite interesting. Jake mentioned race 2 and the battle that he had with Ash towards the end, trying to get back ahead of the Ford Focus. And it shows how close that battle was, because that was the smallest winning margin that we've had this season, only just, but the smallest winning margin between two cars. But then flip it right on its head. In race 3, George Gamble was able to nip off up the road as everyone battled behind him, and he went on to take the biggest winning margin in race 3. And it was a big win for George, because it was only later on when I was going through my stats and my spreadsheets that I realised that George is the 150th driver who's made it onto the top step of the podium in the British Touring Car Championship. So that's a nice thing for him to have, especially on a weekend when it was his maiden race win. One thing with Jake, he's touched on consistency being key in this championship, and that's something that me and you, Shaun, have discussed with quite a few drivers this season. People like Rory Butcher, who, you know, just keeps chipping away at the points and scoring throughout the season. You can't consistently score points if you're not finishing races. That's a simple fact. There's no other way of looking at it. And as things stand, we've only got 3 drivers on the grid, Jake being one of them, who've managed to complete every racing lap this season. And that's something going forwards that's important. You've got to be there at the finish. You've got to be scoring the points. It's no good going and getting a good haul of points and winning race 1 if you then retire from race 2, you're at the back of the grid in race 3 and you can't come through. You've got to be there consistently right through to the end of the season. And, you know, that you also need experience. Experience is a big part of the British Touring Car Championship. We've seen, you know, how drivers like Jake have come up through the ladder and have got races under the belt and are now reaping the benefits of it. But when it comes to experience, a big task for Jake is to take the fight to his teammate, because this weekend at Snetterton, Colin Turkington is going to be taking part in his 500th BTCC race. That is a massive amount of experience. And, you know, for someone to have been around that long and to have been at the front for as long as Colin's been is really impressive. And it's going to be a big ask. It's going to be a big ask, but, you know,
it's about 25 as well. I don't know what sort of growth serum he's got there. He's definitely got great skin.
He certainly doesn't look his age. But, you know, I mean, 500 starts for, you know, people like Jake. You know, Ash Sutton, all right, he's won multiple titles, but, you know, he's not done anywhere near 500 races. To have to take the fight to someone with that much experience behind them isn't an easy task.
And great pace as well. You know, don't forget that bit, because it's great having experience. You know, I mean, Jason's struggling a little bit. Jason Plato is in his final season. You know, he's fantastic. I don't know how many races he's done. It must be more. It must be more than 500, mustn't it? I don't know how many he's done. 700.
He'll hit 650 in a couple of rounds' time.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to Jason winning a race. I mean, I really am, actually. I think it'll be absolutely fantastic. I think something's got to change somewhere, but, you know, in the dynamics in the team or whatever. But I can see Jason. I mean, I think he comes alive when he gets a sniff of victory, as we saw a couple of years ago when we had that classic race. I think Roy won in the end, but with him and Ash knocking 10 bells out of each other over the course of the whole race, I think. But once he gets the sniff of victory, you know, he definitely comes alive, I think. So that'd be exciting to see. But I mean, again, Jake, you've just had a great weekend, got yourself back in the mix. What are your aims? I know everybody says you want to win it, but would you be happy just to be in the fight at the end? I mean, it's your first year with West Surrey. You know, are you happy with that, or is really, you know, the instinct to really try and win it first time out with West Surrey Racing?
Yeah, I want to win it, Shaun. You know, I feel like I can. I was in the mix last year, and that was great, and I love being a part of that final 5. You know, that they do at the last round there, and it's great. You know, I loved it. I loved everything about it, and, you know, I know we'll have that again regardless this year. So, you know, although it's something to look forward to, you know, ultimately I want the big prize at the end. You know, I want to win the championship. I've never won a championship of any type yet. So I'd love for the British Touring Car Championship to for that to happen, really, this year. That would be amazing. So, yeah, I have no reason why I don't think, I have every reason why I think I can do it. I really do. I've got the best car, best team, and I think I'm driving a lot better now, especially in the second half of the season. I'm filled with confidence, and yeah, ultimately I know it's going to go down to the very last race. Of course it will, but we just got to do our job now. We've got to build that meat on that bone in these next couple of races, and try and get back to, or try and lead the championship, with a round to go. That'd be fantastic, and just get right up there. So let's see. But yeah, my aim is to win the British Touring Car Championship, no doubt.
No, and you're definitely one of the drivers, and there's quite a few on the grid, Tom Ingram and a few others in there as well, who are the products of the TOCA package, which, comes all the way from, Ginetta Juniors through to, Minis now and Porsches and whatever else goes on at the week, Formula 4 and all that sort of stuff as well. So, which is great. I mean, it's a fantastic motorsport spectacle, great TV coverage and all that sort of thing. But you didn't have the karting background. You had a little bit of karting. But I mean, again, it's been hard work, hasn't it, for you and your dad Simon to sort of make it work, and there's been a few dark days, I know, along the way to make it work. And hopefully you'll see we've always seen the rewards for it now. But I mean, it isn't the TOCA package. It's really, that obviously it's a financial thing, but it does actually give a drivers a real spotlight to move their career forward.
Yeah, it does. The TOCA package is fantastic. What Alan Gow has done with moulding this, this whole race meeting is quite remarkable, really. I mean, you've got, the best junior series in the world racing on it, with the Ginetta Junior series. And, I've been very lucky to look after a lot of the kids that have come through there in the last 10 years, really. And some, a lot of them I'm very, very proud of in what they've gone on to achieve. And so, and even to this day, that's still continuing. I still look after a young Japanese driver today called Kanato Lee, who is driving for Elite. And, it makes me very proud to give something back to, to the juniors and to keep it going. So everything about it, juniors, G55 Ginetta's Carrera Cup, which I did a little bit of, is amazing. I think that's really taken a big step forward in the last few years with, to be honest, just really good drivers doing it, all the way from sort of Harry King to obviously Camish coming back into it, Adam Smalley now, and one of my other Ginetta juniors, Theo Edgerton. So there's some really good people driving the Carrera Cup and making it exciting again, And then obviously you've also got F4, which is the very starting process for drivers that most likely, some of them, or one of them at least, will end up in F1 at some point, So I think almost one kid from each year they've done F4 has gone on to be some sort of, development with an F1 team, So it's very, very interesting to see that all unfold. So yeah, there's a great package there, and I'm very grateful that I managed to come up driving through a lot of those series. But you're also right in the fact that, yeah, it was hard, very, very, very hard. I mean, I do not come from a family that has money, really. So it's, we've fought for every single penny we can to go racing.
Well, as we can see, they keep you in the attic by the look of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some toys up here.
Surrounded by your toys.
Yeah, I'm a big kid now. I was a small kid, now I'm a bit of a big kid. But yeah, it's been extremely tough, and I'm just thankful now that we've made it work and we have got to the top in terms of driving for BMW West Surrey, and it's all thanks to so many people, especially you, Shaun, as well, for getting my career going again back in 2019. So, there's an awful lot of people that have helped along the way, and people that I really do owe all my racing career to.
And I guess Jake's probably one of the best examples for a young driver coming through about how, you can't give up in this game, because I'm sure there have been times when he's been in British touring cars when, you, Jake, and your dad have probably thought, is it worth all the hard work and effort that we're having to put in to get on the grid? And, it just takes that one moment, in your case, teaming up with Mark Blundell and the doors that's opened, and all of a sudden everything becomes worthwhile. And like I say, it just shows you can't give up if you want to get to the top.
You were right, Matt. And, we had that. We had exactly that in 2018. I was driving for a team, and I was so unhappy that I actually quit after the mid-season part at Croft, and that killed me. But also I couldn't do it anymore. I was just on the way up to Croft for that weekend, and my dad was saying, "Are you all right?" Sort of thing. And I said, "No, I just don't want to be here. Don't want to do it. I really don't want to actually get in that car again and drive." I was so fed up with it, hated every second of it. And, we had to stop. And I'm very thankful that I did, even though it killed me a lot of the time and it was a nightmare with sponsors and stuff like that. But Shaun really did save the day. He still believed in me and gave me the chance to get back into touring cars. And it was the perfect storm mixed with Mark coming in. And that is really what saved my touring car career. There's no question about it that, where I am now, my second part of my career, if you like, is thanks to Shaun and Dad and some of my sponsors staying loyal with me in that time to get me back on. And yeah, never ever give up. Winners never quit, quitters never win.
Also, in fact, I mean, you work hard at it and do it, and you've shown the pace. But what I will say as well, going back to the previously working with other teams and stuff, things don't go always right. I mean, we had plenty of nightmares, didn't we, with stuff going wrong and things like that. I mean, it happens in racing, and it's quite easy, for your head to drop. And if it's consistent, then it drops out. But then suddenly somebody who's having a terrible weekend one weekend have a great weekend the next thing. And we're going back to the consistency thing. You've got to be consistent in this game, because if you're not consistent, it's just, first of all, it's hard work mentally, because it's all so up and down. But you're never going to be successful championship-wise. You'll be an internet sensation one weekend, and you'll be an idiot the next weekend. So it's it's just how it is, really. So it's easy to look back on it and see all the good stuff, but there's also bad stuff that happens when you're racing for us as well. Don't without being, don't want to just pretend to be the superhero about it, because there's always things going wrong somewhere or other. But then going into this last sort of just over a third of a season, really, I would say that, tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, looking at Snetterton should be quite strong for you. Then is Thruxton after that, Thruxton was pretty good earlier in the year as well.
Yeah.
Then we're at Silverstone. Got a feeling that might be a bit more of a struggle. Don't know though. I think that might be a bit of a points taker rather than anything else. And then going to Brands, we get later in the year, then it's getting colder and colder. I would say then the front wheel drive start having the advantage, especially over the first few laps of the race. You've got to say, I think it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride coming into that final round.
Yeah, I think you're right, Shaun. I mean, you are massively correct in the fact that once it gets colder, it becomes harder work. Once the car's going, we're fine. But those first 2 or 3 laps, especially at somewhere, like Silverstone more so, I think, because the lack of corners, there's so many straights. And so front wheel drive cars just help generate that temperature and keep that temperature a little bit better. So it's going to be really tough, which is why, I think for Thruxton and definitely Snetterton this weekend, we've got to make a bit more of an impact and try and get to the front of this championship. I feel like we can. Thruxton, the car was great. Last time we had 2 seconds behind Josh, obviously, who's mighty round there, which was good. And Snet, I've no doubt we're going to be at the front again, especially with the heat that we've got this weekend by the looks of it. So, yeah, I'm happy with where we are at the moment. And you can only take one race weekend at a time. You just got to focus on one at a time. Forget about the end of the year for a minute, because we're not there and we don't know what position we're in. So let's just get on with Snet. I'm sure it's going to be good. And looking to Thruxton, I also believe that was going to be a good round for us.
Well, that's great. So, I mean, thanks very much, Jay. Absolutely brilliant to hear from you. Good luck with the rest of the season, and everybody else who's on the grid as well, because I can't be too biased. I can't help being a little bit biased, but I'm not too biased. But for this, I am not biased at all, obviously. Matt, absolutely brilliant. Thanks for your input as well. Looking forward to seeing you at the weekend, as I missed the last race when you went up to Sunday for a change, Knock Hill.
Look how well Jake went when you weren't there.
Maybe I did expect that I had my sort of pass rescinded, as he went so well up there without me moaning in his ear most of the time, is usually what I'm doing about various bits and pieces. But it's great. I mean, I think we're going to have a fantastic end to the season. I mean, I really think that it could be really spectacular. And I think you'll definitely end up, I think, with 5, as long as, Josh Cook sort of gets back on the pace if a little. I mean, I know he was a little bit disappointed over the last couple of meetings, but the team's working hard and they're putting a lot of effort in. So I'm sure BTC Racing will get on top of whatever sort of problems they're having over the last couple of meetings. But I think you might have 5 of you with about 10 or 15 points, which could be quite spectacular. So thanks very much. Thanks for joining us. If you want to find any more information about the British Touring Car Championship, why not download the app, find out exactly what's going on, and look forward to seeing you on ITV this weekend.